Midnight thunder rolled over Cane Ridge. The stovetop crackled once, then quieted. Elias Kane sat by the dying fire, coffee untouched, shotgun across his lap. Silence had kept him alive. Silence and doors that stayed shut. 3 knocks, not fists. 3 weak taps, like rain learning to speak. He rose. Leather creaked. Floorboards answered. Wind pressed the walls. Dust hissed along the threshold. He unbarred the door. A woman stood there, mud-caked, barefoot, shivering in torn cloth as if the wind had fought her and won. Lantern light found her face and broke on it. "Please," she whispered. "Don't send me back." The words scraped like old wood. He said nothing. The porch groaned. Somewhere past the tree line, thunder rolled again. A breath, too. He studied the way her hands trembled, the way her eyes refused to close. Lightning split the yard. For a heartbeat, the world went white. That's when he saw it. The iron brand on her wrist, skin raised and raw. The mark the Miller gang pressed on cattle and people. The same men who once took everything from him. Fire, smoke, his brother's name swallowed by heat. Elias looked away. No words, no questions. Just action. He stepped back and opened the door wider. "Till morning," he muttered. She hovered, half inside, half out, like a shadow deciding who owns it. Another thunderclap shook the ridge road. The fire coughed and leaned, as if listening. Outside, wind braided dust along the porch. The tree line held still. He set the shotgun against the jamb, hand still on the stock. The tremor he'd buried woke in his fingers. He felt the old weight return. Failure, ash, the night that never cooled. Morning, he said, though both knew better, might never come. Dawn came slow, bleeding through smoke-colored clouds. The fire had died sometime in the night. So had the warmth. Clara lay still on the cot, breath shallow, skin damp with fever. Elias pressed a wet cloth to her brow. Each touch drew a tremor through him he couldn't name. He'd done this before, once, for a wife who never woke. He changed the cloth again. The sound of dripping water filled the silence. Outside, wind scraped over the ridge road. Then, hoofbeats. Distant, slow, not aimless. He froze. The beats faded, but the dust they left behind stayed in his chest. When she stirred, her eyes snapped open, wild and lost. "They'll find me," she whispered. "They always do." Elias didn't answer. She tried to sit up. Pain pulled her back down. He caught her shoulder before she fell. The heat from her skin burned through his calloused palm. He stood and crossed to the window. Through the thin curtain, the horizon shimmered, dust clouds rising. Someone out there was moving with purpose. He turned back. "Who's coming?" Her lips trembled. The men with the brand, silence again. Only the stove ticking as it cooled. In his mind, he saw his brother fall, gunsmoke and firelight. Heard the banker's voice promising gold for silence. Saw the letter he never mailed. Elias picked up the rifle leaning by the door. The steel caught the dawn. He loaded it slow, each click loud as thunder. "You ain't alone anymore," he said. But the words fell flat, hollow, like an oath made to ghosts. 2 days passed. The fever broke, but the air stayed heavy, thick with waiting. By noon, the wind changed, carrying dust and iron. Elias felt it before he saw it. A carriage climbed the ridge, black wheels cutting into dry earth. The horses came in breathing hard, foam at their bits. Behind them, 3 riders in black dusters rode silent, formation tight, hands never far from their revolvers. The door opened. Banker Thomas Grady stepped down slow, brushing dust from a silver vest that shone brighter than his grin. "Been a long time, Kane." Elias stood on the porch, rifle resting against his leg. "Not long enough." Grady's eyes swept the yard, pausing toward the barn. "Lost something, maybe? A girl?" "Costly kind of trouble." He smiled like a knife. "She ran off with some debts unpaid." "Poor thing won't last out here." "Not without help." Elias said nothing. The wind answered for him, rattling the porch boards. Grady's tone softened. Fake sweet. "You protect her, and I'll burn this place down like the last one. You remember that smell, don't you?" The words hit harder than any bullet. The screams. The firelight. His brother's face turning to ash. Elias's jaw flexed. His fingers brushed the stock of his rifle. Grady chuckled low. You always were sentimental. He stepped back into the carriage. This land's still mine, Kane. Everything on it, too. The wheels turned, crunching gravel, rolling away slow. Dust swallowed them. From the barn door, Clara appeared, pale, trembling. He owns everything, she whispered. Even my freedom. Elias met her eyes. The scar on her wrist caught the fading sun, glowing like ember. He shook his head once. Not anymore. But the lie burned worse than truth. Night came down thick and orange, sky bruised by smoke from some far-off burn. The ridge wind sighed through broken fence posts, whispering the same word over and over, remember. Elias sat by the window, lamp turned low, sleep nowhere near. Every blink brought fire, every breath brought ash. He saw it again, the barn collapsing, his brother screaming, his own boots pounding the dirt as he ran. He'd left them all behind. That was the sin he never spoke of. In the barn, boards creaked. A muffled cry cut through the dark. He moved quiet, rifle in hand, boots soft on wood. Clara thrashed on the cot, sweat shining across her temples. He burned the others, she muttered, lost in dream. For what I wouldn't give. Elias stopped cold. What did you keep? His voice came out low, rough as gravel. Her eyes opened. Fear first, then something harder. The ledger, she whispered. The one that proves what he's done. The word hit like a bullet. Ledger. The fire. The debts. The missing names. Every ghost tied to that book. He stepped closer. You hid it? She nodded. Under the loose plank behind the hay. They think it's gone. Outside, an owl called once. Then nothing. No wind, no night sound. The kind of silence that means someone's near. Elias cocked the rifle slow. The click echoed too loud. They're close, he said. Clara stood, legs unsteady, but eyes alive. Her hands trembled as she reached for a pitchfork leaning by the stall. For the first time since she'd come, she didn't look like something broken. She looked ready to fight. Elias glanced at her. Sweat, dust, fear, and firelight painting her face, and felt something dangerous spark inside him. Hope. The storm came crawling over Cane Ridge. Black and swollen, thunder crouched behind it like a beast waiting to pounce. The smell of rain mixed with smoke. Elias could taste iron in the air. Something was coming that wasn't weather. He saddled the horse, leather creaking beneath his hands. The satchel hung heavy against his chest, the ledger inside, still damp from sweat and fear. He turned to Clara. Ever shot one? She shook her head. No. Then learn quick. He pressed the revolver into her trembling hands. Lightning flashed, lighting the barn door in white veins. She flinched. They're out there, she whispered. He nodded. Always were. Thunder cracked like gunfire. Through the downpour, the ridge road shimmered, torches moving in slow, steady rhythm. Grady's men. 3, maybe more. Each step closer drowned by wind. Elias shoved a table against the cabin door, dragged the stovepipe down, and barred the window shutters. Every nail groaned. Every sound counted seconds. The storm's voice deepened. Hail against the roof, wind clawing at the porch. He stood by the doorway, rifle ready. Eyes locked on the fire dying low in the grate. If you're still here listening, he murmured, almost to himself, remember, evil never leaves on its own. The words hung in the air like prayer or curse. Clara looked up from the revolver, her face pale but steady. Right here. Right now, she whispered again. Elias met her gaze. Lightning flared between them, splitting the world into black and silver. She chambered around. We end it. Outside, the first torch hit the mud. Then another. Then the sound of boots. The storm had arrived. Rain came hard, needles on tin, beating the world into mud and noise. The first bullet punched through glass. The window shattered, spraying the firelight with sparks of silver. Elias spun, rifle up. He fired once, twice, each shot swallowed by thunder. Clara! He shouted, but the wind stole her name. Hoofbeats circled the ranch. Shadows moved through the sheets of rain. Grady's men, black coats slick and gleaming. One hurled a torch. It arced like a comet and struck the barn. Fire bloomed up the wall, wild and hungry. The smell hit first, burning wood, wet ash. The past alive again. Elias coughed, eyes stinging, lungs choking on smoke and memory. He kicked the door open and ran into the storm. Clara. Through the haze he saw her, crouched behind the wagon, ledger clutched tight against her chest. She raised the revolver, hands trembling. A rider bore down, muzzle flashing. She screamed and fired. The man fell hard, body splashing into mud. Another shape stepped forward from the tree line. No torch, no haste. Calm as a sermon. Grady. History repeats. Kane, he called over the roar. And this time, no one walks away. Elias dropped the rifle. Rage carried him. They slammed together in the mud, fists and boots, firelight painting them both in orange hell. Grady's laughter mixed with rain. You never learn, he hissed. Elias drove his knee into the banker's ribs. Pain burst through his own side, but he didn't stop. When it ended, both men lay still. Mud, rain, blood, and fire tangled as one. Clara crawled forward, dragging the revolver through the muck. She pressed the barrel against Grady's chest. Her voice shook but didn't break. You don't own me. She pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. Grady laughed once, breath wet with victory. Then another sound followed. A single metallic breath behind him. Elias's hand rose from the dirt. One last shot. The bullet found the heart that never had one. The echo rolled across Cane Ridge, deeper than thunder, final as truth. Morning came grey and hollow. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was worse. Smoke coiled over the ridge like breath from a dying world. The ranch was gone, only a skeleton of beams and cinders standing against the pale sky. Elias leaned on a charred post, blood dried in the cracks of his knuckles. His hat lay somewhere in the mud, lost like everything else. The air still smelled of gunpowder and grief. Clara sat a few feet away, wrapped in a soot-streaked blanket, the ledger clutched tight against her chest. The pages were half burned, but the ink, the truth, had survived. He's dead, she said, voice thin as smoke. But what now? Elias stared past her, past the wreckage toward the valley below. The banker's town slept under a sheet of gold light, quiet, untouched. His jaw worked, words slow to come. Now, he said finally, we make sure no one forgets. They dug the grave by the burnt tree, the same one that had watched the fire start. Each shovelful of dirt landed with a sound that stayed in the bones. When they finished, Clara laid the ledger on the mound for a moment, then pulled it back close. The wind rose, scattering ash across the fresh soil, wiping away their footprints before they could harden. Clara looked at him, her eyes tired but soft. Thank you, she whispered. Elias nodded once. The tremor was back in his hands. Only this time, it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like life returning. Weeks slipped by like wind through broken fences. By early spring, travelers coming down Cane Ridge spoke of a porch rebuilt from ashes, 2 chairs carved from old timber, one rocking gentle in the breeze, the other standing still. In town, the stories changed with every mouth. Some said the rancher went mad. Others swore he burned his own home to save a woman who wasn't his. But they all agreed on one thing. Thomas Grady's name was finished. The ledger reached the courthouse in a rain-stained satchel. Pages torn, corners singed, but the truth still legible. The debts, the threats, the vanished farms, all signed in Grady's hand. His empire folded overnight, the same way it was built, on fear and silence. Clara stayed. The ridge was her home now. Each night she sat by the fire, reading the names from the ledger aloud. Voices of the ruined spoken into flame. Sometimes she paused, as if listening for them to answer, and far beyond the ridge, a single rider lingered at the tree line. Rain slicked the brim of his hat. Around his finger something caught the firelight, a ring that once belonged to Grady. The cycle hadn't ended. It was only waiting. The wind shifted, carrying the echo of her voice across the hills. In every man's silence, the narrator whispered, there's a storm waiting. So tell me, if you were him, what would you have done?